ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਹਾਂ ਜਸਲੀਨ ਕੌਰ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹਾਲ ਹੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਤਬਦੀਲੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਦੇਸ਼ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਕਲੌਗ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਕਈ ਦਿੱਕਤਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਹਮਣਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕੌਮਾਂਤਰੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਦਿੱਕਤਾਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤੇ NRI ਫਰਾਡ ਮੈਰਿਜ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਵੀ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਵਧਦੇ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਮਾਮਲਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਆਧਾਰਿਤ ਰਹੇਗੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼। ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਦੀ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਹਾਲ ਹੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧੇ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਅਧੀਨ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਲਡਰਸ ਹੁਣ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ 5 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਣਗੇ। ਦੱਸ ਦਈਏ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਤਬਦੀਲੀਆਂ 4 ਜੁਲਾਈ ਤੋਂ ਲਾਗੂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧੇ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਾਧੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾਪਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁੜ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਆਸਾਨ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਲਡਰ ਲੰਬੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੱਕ ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਣਗੇ। ਇਹ ਤਬਦੀਲੀਆਂ 4 ਜੁਲਾਈ 2022 ਤੋਂ ਲਾਗੂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤਹਿਤ ਹਰ ਵਾਰੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦਾਖਲ ਹੋਣ ਉਤੇ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਲਡਰਸ ਦੀ ਸਟੇ ਵਧਾ ਕੇ 5 ਸਾਲ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਉਹ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਟੇ ਵਿੱਚ 2 ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਦੀ ਅਪੀਲ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ, ਯਾਨੀ ਕਿ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਲਡਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ 7 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਰੁਕ ਸਕਣਗੇ।
ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਨਾਉਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲਈ, ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਅਨਾਉਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਮੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਸੀਗੀ। ਮੇਨ ਪਰਪਸ ਇਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਗ੍ਰੈਂਡ ਪੇਰੈਂਟਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੀਯੂਨਾਈਟ ਫੈਮਲੀਜ਼ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੋ ਸਕਣ ਈਜ਼ੀਲੀ ਤੇ ਲੌਂਗਰ ਪੀਰੀਅਡ ਲਈ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ 2 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਜਾਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਐਕਸਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ 5 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਜੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੋਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ 7 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਐਕਸਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਅਤੇ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਅਨਾਉਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਕੰਪਨੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਹੀ ਲਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਊਟਸਾਈਡ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਲਿਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ 'ਤੇ IRCC ਦੇ, ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਦੋਂ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਸਕੋਗੇ। ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਹੈਲਪ ਹੋਊਗੀ ਅਤੇ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਗੁੱਡ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਕਾਫੀ ਦੇਰ ਤੋਂ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ 2 ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਕਿਉਂ 4 ਜੁਲਾਈ ਤੋਂ ਇਫੈਕਟਿਵ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ। ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਐਕਸਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ 5 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ, 5 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ 7 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕੇਗੀ। ਦੂਸਰੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਊਟਸਾਈਡ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀਆਂ ਕੰਪਨੀਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਸਕੇਗੇ, ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕਿ IRCC ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ 'ਤੇ ਲਿਸਟਡ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ। ਸੋ ਥੀਸ ਆਰ ਦ ਗੁੱਡ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਫਾਰ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ।
ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਬਿਨੈਕਾਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕਵਰੇਜ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਕਰਵਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੈਅ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਇਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਸੁਪਰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੋਲਡਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੀ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਕਵਰੇਜ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਕਰਵਾ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਮੈਡੀਕਲ ਇੰਸ਼ੋਰੈਂਸ ਦੇਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਤੈਅ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ IRCC ਦੀ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੁਹੱਈਆ ਹੋਏਗੀ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਕੁਝ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਾਮਲਿਆਂ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਖਾਸ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਲਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਨ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ। ਹੈਲੋ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ, ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ so much for joining PTC Punjabi.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Minister, you have recently announced new changes to the super visa program which will be implemented from July 4th. So will this be applicable to the existing super visa holders? Can they get the 5-year visa from Canada, or they have to exit the country once?
So look, just for the context of those in the audience who might not be familiar with the announcement, I think it's important we let them know what the new program is. It's an extension of the super visa program to make it more generous, to allow people to come for a longer period of time, for a period of 5 years, with the ability to extend it for 2 years at a time beyond that, as well as to get insurance from an international insurance provider for medical purposes. This is going to be, and this is to answer your question directly, this is a brand new program that will launch on July 4th. People who are here that have status on a super visa today will still be able to come and go from Canada in accordance with the terms of their existing visa. They will be able, when that visa expires, to apply for the new program as well. So the same people could be eligible, but not under the same terms of their existing visa. It will require a new application that would become available on the 4th of July of this year.
All right, Minister, you're also working on providing the international medical coverage to the parents and grandparents. So how much coverage will be provided to them?
So this will depend on the particular policy that a person purchases, the terms of their insurance agreement. Right now, and there's some details that still need to be finalized. As you can appreciate, this announcement was only made just a few days ago. The current policy requires that you have up to $100,000 of coverage for at least 1 year. I'm sure we're going to be looking for something of a comparable nature from international insurance providers that's comparable to what we require from Canadian insurance providers today. We're going to have more details in the near term as we finalize the details on which providers will be designated for the purpose of the program and the quality of the coverage people will be required. But people should expect to have at least a comparable level of insurance coverage that's currently required from a Canadian provider under the existing Super Visa program.
Minister, apart from the Super Visa program, I do have some other issues to talk about, and one of them is the backlogs of the applications, which is the major concern right now. So there are over 2 million applications in the backlog, which is about 1 million more than prior to the pandemic. People are also submitting the same application more than once, which was also encouraged by the visa offices in India for the visitor visa application. Is this just another way to earn money? Why the new application is being processed faster than the application which was submitted before? So the question is, how can Canada improve its immigration application backlogs and the processing times?
Let me break it down into a few different chapters in terms of my answer. I'll address your question about processing times, and then as well as a situation you asked about multiple applications for visitors visas, and in processing times, I think you're going to see that there's been a significant improvement. Actually, today it's a really interesting day to be having this conversation. As of today, we will be welcoming the 200,000th permanent resident this year into Canada, which is a month and a half faster than any year on history in Canada's immigration system. We're well on our target to meet the largest and most ambitious immigration levels plan that we've ever seen. Similarly, we're seeing a huge uptick in the pace of processing for work permits. We've got the last data point that I saw recently was up to the end of April. We processed 216,000 work permits this year compared to only 88,000 the year before during the same period of time. Across all of our lines of business, we're seeing a huge uptick as a result of the investments that we've made that included hiring 500 more people, $85 million in the economic and fiscal update for work permits, study permits, temporary residency visas, proof of citizenship, PR cards. We're back with PR cards to about a 60-day for renewals. We're seeing right across the board that processing times are coming down. I expect to tie off the first portion of my answer, that by the end of this year, most of our lines of business will be back to the service standard that was applicable before the pandemic. And this is a wonderful story that we are getting back on track and getting there fairly quickly now. I do expect there will be one or two lines of business, citizenship in particular, because there was such a large group of people who weren't able to have in-person ceremonies for a big part of the pandemic. That might spill into the first portion of next year. But other lines of business, I expect to be back to service standard by the end of this calendar year. To answer your question about multiple temporary residency visa applications, there was a really unique situation that we had to deal with. And some of this predates my time as minister, but I can explain to you where the phenomenon came from. Up until September 7th of last year, the rules about coming to Canada for non-essential purposes were quite restricted. We had a change in posture when we started to open back up for people who were traveling around the world. There's an enormous number of people who have had their purpose for travel change. You can imagine somebody who might have been coming for a wedding that was canceled in April of 2020, or perhaps a funeral or some other event that didn't happen or should have happened some time ago. They may no longer want to come to Canada. We're still working through those older inventories of cases, but if a person wants to reapply, particularly as we leverage new digital technologies, we're able to process more quickly applications that came in after September 7th, because we don't need to reach back out to those individuals to say, has your purpose of travel changed? There's quite a few, thousands upon thousands of applications that were for a purpose that is no longer applicable. And it's a way for us to actually focus on the people who are going to be coming to Canada rather than someone who filed an application some time ago but has no intention to come at this point in time.
Minister, but some people had also complained that the immigration officials, even the member parliaments, have shut down the communication with the applicant and their lawyers as well. They mentioned that the officials have been using the excuse of Afghanistan crisis earlier and now the war in Ukraine. So they're demanding the transparency in the processing times, the stage of the applications, and the reason for the refusals.
So this is really important. I think transparency is an essential aspect, not just of our immigration system, but of our democracy. For what it's worth, I spent time working for a freedom of information nonprofit in South Africa, a nonprofit NGO that worked in the legal area. One of the things that we've already done to increase transparency is actually change the posted timelines for processing on our website. So we're actually communicating to people what the current processing time is rather than what the service standard is, because the pandemic and Ukraine and Afghanistan, they did have an impact on our processing time. If you ask the system to do more with the same amount of resources, then it's going to have an impact. What we've done by publishing the actual processing times is increase that transparency. In addition, we've also established a new case tracker. So far, it's available for citizenship applications and family reunification applications in our permanent residency system. And we're going to be expanding it to our other streams as well as soon as they're ready to handle this. What this case tracker does is actually gives you the same information that IRCC is able to find, but it gives it to you on your phone in your pocket, rather than having to call IRCC or call your member of parliament, who then calls our office, who then reaches out to an office somewhere around the world. As we continue to increase the digitization of the system in the months ahead, we're going to be able to roll this program out along other lines of business and give people real information they can trust on their own device when they just have to log in to get that information. This is a game-changing way that we're going to increase transparency and actually reduce the burden on the system, because fewer people will be calling IRCC to get updates about their cases because they don't know where they're at. This is a change that we're making that I'm very proud to be a part of, and I'm looking forward not just to increasing transparency, but to improving dramatically the efficiency of Canada's immigration at the same time.
Minister Fraser, we will continue this chat, but right after a short break. ब्रेक तो बाद ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। Minister, NRI fraud marriages is the another issue I want to talk to you about, and this is happening since last many years. I would like to share a recent case with you. The victim himself has reached out to us. So this Indian couple got married in 2015. After 2 years of marriage, the wife applied for a student visa and it got approved. She's here since 2017. She's working here. The husband was trying to get hold of her, but there was no response. When he realized that she's cheating on him, he struggled to get her passport revoked by the Indian officials. But now the wife has filed a refugee claim, and the husband does not want the Canadian government to grant her the permanent residency because she's betraying him as well as the Canadian government by providing the false information and misusing the system as well. So, Minister Fraser, do you think there is a loophole in the system somewhere? As an immigration minister, what action you can take to stop such exploitation and bring the culprits to the justice, or do you want to bring back the 2-year marriage rule which conservatives brought when they were in power?
So I want to be very careful not to pass judgment on an application which I'm not familiar with beyond what you've just shared with me during this interview. It's important that we have access to the full set of facts and understand the defined details on an individual person's application. One of the things that I do have some comfort in is the processes that we put in place and the rules that we put in place position IRCC's officers in a place where they're able to actually make a decision with full access to the facts of a given file. To the extent that someone is abusing the system or trying to get into Canada in contravention of the rules, then of course they should not be permitted to get into Canada when so many other people are following the proper procedures. When it comes to an individual refugee claim, that's something, or I should more appropriately say, if it's someone here, a claim of asylum, that's something that's subject to a rigorous assessment by individuals who have the ability to assess their vulnerability, the potential risks they may face if they return back to their country of origin. And those decisions are very importantly taken independently by officers at IRCC or depending on where you're at in the process before the IRB. We put these processes in place to make sure that we have someone who has the ability to learn of all the facts of a case and understand whether the rules apply in a given set of circumstances. And I think it's best that we focus on the process rather than having me pass judgment as minister based on what I've heard on a moment's notice.
Minister, talking about the international students who are in limbo right now after the private colleges in Ontario and Quebec suspended the spring enrollment, and there were some other issues as well with the private colleges in Quebec. Other problems include the labor exploitation of international students, the sex trafficking of female international students as they are financially vulnerable. Concerning number of international student suicides with deaths occurring monthly, such events have taken a toll on students' mental health. International students are charged nearly 5 times higher tuition. They give biggest contribution to the economy. So how are you planning to tackle such cases?
So first of all, let me say that international students make extraordinary contributions to Canada's economy, to our communities. I've seen it in my own community, being a member of parliament who represents post-secondary education institutions. And the international student program, on balance, does extraordinary things for Canada. I think we owe it to the international students who come to Canada to treat them with dignity and respect. It is absolutely heartbreaking when you hear of students who are left without support, who become destitute. Some of the things that we're looking at are the particular rules about how much a student is actually allowed to work, giving them the potential choice of freedom to support themselves, particularly when they're in a circumstance like you've described. To see someone who's paid fees and then had their enrollment canceled with no opportunity to seek redress is the kind of thing that really weighs on me, not just as an immigration minister, but as a person who cares about Canada's reputation in the world and who cares about people who live in my community. One of the things that makes this particularly challenging for the federal government is the fact that it's provincial governments who actually designate learning institutions that identify which institutions have the ability to actually tackle or rather tap into the international students program. We're going to be having conversations with our provincial counterparts over the summer on a range of issues, including, I hope, the international students program, to better understand how we can ensure that we protect against putting students at risk who are coming here to potentially secure a better future for themselves and make a contribution to our communities at the same time.
Last question to you, Minister, before I let you go. Quebec has recently announced to close the immigration pathway available to the international students who attend the unsubsidized private colleges. But the National Association of Career Colleges issued a statement saying that they are disappointed by the decision because such colleges play an important role in the province and the country as a whole.
So one of the things that I should just be clear about is the change in posture in Quebec around postgraduate work permits for unsubsidized private colleges is the fact that this change is it's something Quebec was seeking as a change for learning institutions within their own province. As I just mentioned, it is provincial governments who designate learning institutions for the program more broadly, and this change to the postgraduate work permit for those colleges brings it more closely aligned with the rule that has already been in place for institutions of a similar nature in other provinces across the country. So from our perspective, this was aligning the rules in Quebec with where they already were for the rest of the country. That said, career colleges make a really big difference to our economy. Most of them are excellent participants in our communities, but there are some students who study at these career colleges that, not all of them, I should be very careful not to paint them all with too broad a brush, but there are some that take on more students that they can handle. There are some that we hear stories that are actually horrible about the mental health of students who aren't able to take care of themselves as a result of going into a program that they didn't have full information about. But in this particular instance, it was part of something Quebec was seeking to do, and it brings them more closely aligned with the pre-existing rules in other provinces across the country.
All right, Minister, we do have some more questions, but I know you're running short of time. So it was really nice talking to you, and we hope to see you in our studio soon.
I look forward to my next visit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. ਸੋ ਇਹ ਸੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਖਾਸ ਪੇਸ਼ਕਸ਼ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਕੁਝ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਾਮਲਿਆਂ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਸ਼ੌਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਹ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਈ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ। ਜੇਕਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਕੋਈ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲਿਖ ਕੇ ਭੇਜੋ feedback@ptcnetwork.com ਤੇ। ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫਤੇ, ਉਦੋਂ ਤੱਕ ਲਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਤੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਣੇ ਰਹੋ PTC ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ।